So this is Ben and Anders, and we're doing our CRP discussion on the novel Haunted by Chuck Palahniuk. Um, and we each have 5 questions, 3 of which are chapter specific, and 2 of which are book wide questions. And so we're just going to run through those and just kind of answer them as we go. So my first question for Anders is, what was your favorite individual chapter in the collection, and what do you think the message was that the author was trying to get across?
This is Anders. My favorite chapter would be Punch Drunk, which is the one about like a former Marine and a group of his soldiers who raised money by lip syncing and drag and allowing annoyed people to assault them for free and using the funds to start a war on religion. That was my favorite chapter just because it's kind of random and weird. Um, it's kind of something you don't think about people really doing, like religion. I don't know what religions they're trying to fight against, but um, like you don't really get people to assault you for money most of the time. So it's kind of a weird and random chapter, and that's why I liked it. Okay, so this is Anders talking, and my question for Ben is, what do you think about the chapter Guts?
All right, so this chapter was one of the opening kind of like individual essays in the book. So the book is separated between a main plot line where all of these writers get together at a workshop and are basically in seclusion for kind of an unknown period of time. I think it's about 3 months. And so that's like the main storyline. And then for each writer, it actually goes into individual essays that they've written about themselves and their personal narratives. And so this was the first personal narrative, and it was by a character who goes by the name of Saint Gutsfree. And to be honest, it's really horrific. What ends up happening to him is it starts off with some context where he's talking about how his friends have had different methods of basically pleasuring themselves, and he decides that he's going to try and basically go down into his swimming pool and pleasure himself. And so what ends up happening is he gets stuck to the drain in his pool, and his intestines get basically pulled out of his body. And so he's faced with this real.
This is Anders talking. This is kind of a follow-up question to the previous question for Ben. How do you think a chapter like Guts was perceived from the majority of the people that read a book like Haunted?
So to be honest, I was really caught off guard by it, and I'm sure everyone else who's read this book was probably caught off guard just because it seems like such a surreal situation. Nobody, really envisions ever being trapped in a situation like this, where he's faced with basically, risk death, um, but try and save himself from the humiliation of being seen by his parents in the state that he's in, or save himself and have to live with that his entire life. And so that right there, that dilemma, it gets people thinking, what would I do in that situation, even though nobody thinks that they're ever going to be in that situation. All right, so this has Ben asking Anders the next question, which is, what do you think of the ending of this book, and do you think that it's fitting that Mr. Whittier was trapped outside of the camp despite everyone else being trapped inside it the rest of the book?
I do think it's kind of fitting because he was trying to use everybody else for kind of his own good, I guess, because he was a businessman and trying to make money off these stories these people wrote. And by the end, he had kind of given everybody a little goal that he would like pick one person to give them a much better life. And he tried to do that with Miss Sneezy, but all the other people wound up killing her to prevent Whittier from leaving because they all started to believe that, like, oh, we started this together, so we have to finish this together, that kind of belief thing. And him not being able to get inside to see the aftermath and to see Miss Sneezy to be he was trying to leave with her, it's kind of a fitting end to the book, in my opinion. Okay, this is Anders talking and asking Ben a question about the full book. And the question is, what do you think are some of the main motifs in this book?
Overall, I think it's just got a general tendency towards pointing out the sinfulness of human nature, and whether that's being greedy or selfish or deceitful. There's a lot of different things that everyone does in their own personal narratives that seem to be just the worst of the worst. There's people that are so rich that they decide that the next best thing is to try living poor, and in doing so, kind of mock the poor people. And there's also stories where you've got um, people that are doing like sexual acts to CPR dolls, just to try and get some sort of like feeling in their life. And so it's, there's a lot of really bad things that go on in the book. The one thing that I will say is that um, throughout the plot, and especially in the beginning of the book, they often try to humanize some of these super sinful people, and make them almost feel like protagonists, even though their entire lives they've been the antagonists that have been doing truly horrible things. All right, so this is Ben asking Anders a question about the whole book, and it's, what, in your opinion, do the personal essays and the main plot have in common?
Well, the entire book as a whole, a lot of weird and crazy things happen in the main, like, overall story and all the little essays throughout. Like chapters like Guts, with the weird things happening in it, and then like the entire story, the overall one. These people all kind of turn crazy as well, and thinking that they can do better by making their conditions that aren't bad at first turn into really bad ones, where they go hungry and struggle like through cold and darkness and everything else. Um, like all everything kind of connects in a way that people would do crazy things for stuff, even if they kind of know in the back of their minds that it probably won't work. Um, which I think can be seen in both the personal essays and the bigger story as a whole.
All right, so this has been talking about as a whole the kind of general tendency of the book, and so the trend that I saw is in the beginning, in the main plot, all of the writers in the camp, once they realize that they're kind of stuck there, they begin to like get worried, obviously, because they don't want to be trapped in a camp. And there's one woman who's actually pregnant, and she's very worried. There's a lot of people that have reasons to get out of the camp. As time goes on, however, they begin to realize that the story of them being trapped in this camp is going to be the greatest masterpiece story of their lives. And so, because of this motive of being able to have such a wonderful story, they begin to almost hurt themselves, to exaggerate the conditions. So, the first thing that they do is they get rid of all their food. And they all poke holes in this dehydrated food bags, and so it all gets moldy and they're out of food. The next thing is that they reduce the plumbing situation, and eventually people start dying off. And it even gets to the point where people start to cut off their fingers and their toes because they just want to feel like, or they want to make it look like they've been tortured while they're in this camp. Um, just so that their story can be that much more exaggerated. This eventually culminates in them not even wanting to leave, and there's only a few of them actually left. It's Mother Nature, who is a character. Well, that's her nickname in the book, and there's also Saint Gutsfrey, and they've actually faked a romance throughout, because every good story needs a romance, and they decide that they can't leave because they need their masterpiece to be even more complete. So that's how the book kind of culminates, is them just waiting there, hoping to be rescued and not to rescue themselves.
So this is Anders talking, and we're just going to finish it off, talk about how we like the book as a whole. The book as a whole was pretty good and interesting throughout. A lot of things changed throughout as well. Every story was different in each like short story and the overall plot, and I kind of liked how the author did a short story, a main plot, and then a poem about each character per chapter, which I thought was really interesting, and that's how I like the book overall.
Yeah, I did enjoy the book because it did expose a lot of things that I never really think about human nature. And I will say some of the stuff definitely caught me off guard and definitely grossed me out a little bit. And I don't think I was 100% ready for that at first. But as I kind of read on, I realized that it wasn't so much the reasoning behind grossing us out wasn't just to gross us out. It was to prove a point that people are capable of doing some very horrible things in order to get what they want, and that's the general um, kind of argument the book is making. And so overall, I thought it was a good read. I definitely wouldn't recommend it for everyone though.